Uganda. My name is Dr. Johnny Hook, and I am going to explain to you today how to get involved in this fantastic project. Okay, what we're going to talk about is, as it sounds in the name, it's about creating maps. But the reason for that is all to do with this van that you can see here. And I'll explain what the van is for a bit later on. Before we get too stuck in, I'm going to show you just where Uganda is. Uganda is a country, as you may know, in East Africa. And specifically, we are interested in the northern part of the country, which is called the Acholi sub-region. This is a very poor, very remote and very rural part of the world. Almost all of the jobs here are simply subsistence farming. There are only really 2 towns in the area. The majority of people live out in huts in what they would call the bush, which is just very rural surroundings rather than in towns and cities and so forth. The big thing about the Acholi region is that it suffered a terrible and very brutal war for about 20 years. And as part of that, many of the people who lived there lost limbs, either through gunshot wounds, through landmines, which still continue to cause these injuries even now, years after the war is finished, or simply by having them cut off by insurgents with machetes, which unfortunately is one of the main ways in which people lost limbs during the war. One of the major problems if you are missing an arm and a leg in a region like this is, of course, it's very difficult to work, and people who are disabled have historically become very marginalised very quickly, and in some cases sent away from home or even killed because of their disabilities. This is obviously something that we wanted to help with, so a team from Manchester went over there and we set up a project where we did the first ever prevalence study of disability in that part of the world, and we also created a workshop where we can build prosthetic limbs, and we got our van. And what the van is a mobile clinic. We have a team of prosthetic surgeons and a team of prosthetists who can build the limbs, and they travel around community to community. And our goal is to access every community and give everyone who's missing a major limb the orthopaedic care that they need, a free prosthetic, and then ongoing care in order to maintain the prosthetic and their own health. To be able to do that, we set up these clinics, and that is one of our orthopaedic surgeons. It's called Sam Magada, sat with one of our prosthetists at the front, and everyone sat down with their back to us there is missing a major limb and lives in this village. Once we've given people their limb and their immediate care, we also follow up with them very regularly, and this is me doing exactly that with one of our beneficiaries a few months ago, and he's explaining to me how his limb is and what adjustments might need to be made in order to make it more comfortable for him. Alongside these clinics, we also run large events to try and change attitudes toward disability. And we do that through street theatre, where we have a group of people, some who are able-bodied and some who are disabled, who perform plays that they have written about their experiences of being a disabled person in Uganda. And in doing so, we're able to educate communities and help them to understand what disability is and why people who are disabled should be helped and not sent away or attacked or anything like that. I hope this sounds like a good project to you, and I honestly believe it is, but it runs into one enormous problem, and that problem is that the area that we're working in, northern Uganda, is completely unmapped. No one has ever produced a high quality detailed map of this region, and that means it's very hard for us to know where people are and to find them, and if we can't find people, we can't help them. So that's a huge problem. So alongside this project, we also started a parallel project, which is this one, Community Map in Uganda, where we're trying to map it. And what we did was we started running these events called mapathons at the university. This is one of them that we ran a couple of years ago. And then over time, we extended these events. We ran them in pubs and venues around Manchester. We've run them for companies where their employees have mapped for us. We've even been to music festivals. This is some children mapping with us at Blue Dot Festival in Cheshire a few years ago. And in doing so, all these volunteers are able to draw all of the missing features onto the map using satellite imagery and produce the first ever detailed maps of this region, which is great. And once they've drawn all those shapes of buildings and roads and so on, we have a mapping team of volunteers out in Uganda, and what we do there is we provide them with training. Here's me providing exactly that, in order to be able to go out into the field and fill in all the details that we can't map from here. For example, if one of our volunteers draws a building, they can go in and say what that building is. Is it a school? Is it a factory? What is it? They can name the roads and the path. They can correct any small mistakes that we've made, and they can update things. If a building has fallen down since the imagery that we used to draw it was taken, then they can update that. And they go out in the field with paper maps, they draw the changes on, and then we use a special system that we've built in order to allow them to upload those maps from the paper onto our digital database. This is a really valuable way to contribute time. It's very easy, it requires no experience whatsoever, and is a great way to make a huge difference to people's lives. To give you an idea of the scale of the difference that you can make, if you were to map 50 huts, if you draw 50 circles on our map, on average that would mean one person is going to get a prosthetic leg and the ongoing healthcare that goes with it for the rest of their lives. So I want to say thank you very much for getting involved. If you'd like to know more, you can see that at our website, communitymapping.org, or you can contact me at jonathan.hook@manchester.ac.uk. And once again, I just want to say thank you for getting involved. Now, if you've watched the video and you're ready to go, all you need to do is click the Start Mapping button. And when you click that button, it will open up a new tab for you containing our mapping tool. And what we have here is two maps of the same place. The one on the left contains all the data that we have in our database about this location. And the one on the right is satellite imagery that shows what's actually there. And the simple question we have to ask ourselves is there anything missing from the map on the left that's clearly in existence on the ground in the map on the right? And the answer here is yes, there is. You can see there's little huts, little buildings lying around, there's lots of little tracks shown there where people could walk or drive along. And crucially, the obvious thing here is the only thing on this map is this big road up here. You can see that's obviously a tarmacked road that's visible here on this map, but any of the details have been missed. We haven't mapped those yet. So this is a good example of a square that needs mapping. And what we do is we say, yes, this square needs mapping, and we take control of it and fill in the map. That's what this whole project is about. Now, if there was nothing that needed mapping because either the satellite imagery was empty or because everything was already done on the map, we could click that red button there, and that would log in the database that no further mapping is needed in this location. If we weren't sure for any reason, then we could click on the blue button. If perhaps there was a big cloud in the way on the satellite imagery, or it was a bit fuzzy, or you just couldn't quite see what you're doing, then we'd struggle. But here we can see clearly there's a big track there, and if we zoom in a little, we can see there's some buildings, and none of those things are here on the map to our left. So what we're going to do is say, yes, we need to map this area, start mapping now. And that will open up a new tab again. And ordinarily this would take you straight into a map editor, but on the first time you click it, you'll probably have to log in to a website called OpenStreetMap, and that's where we draw our data. If you don't have an account with OpenStreetMap, which I imagine most people won't, you can simply click register now, you fill in a short form, they send you an email to confirm your details, and then you'll have login details, and you can simply type those in here, username and password, and click login. And you only have to do that the first time that you press it. And if you go in to OpenStreetMap, you'll then be able to see the editor, It's asking me here if I want to restore previous things I've mapped. I'm going to say no in this case. It might ask you that question. It might ask you if you want to see a tour of the tool. You can just press no there and say you want to start mapping immediately. Or it might just take you straight to this map here. What we can see is just the same view, the same satellite imagery as we were looking at a moment ago. The only difference here is that we can't see the square, unfortunately. That's something we aren't able to fix. It's a bit irritating, but it's not a major problem. And the reason for that is it doesn't matter if you drift outside of your designated square a little bit. Okay, we know that the square is basically just the middle of the screen, and as you can see, that road, which you remember was just in the top corner of the square, and these little huts were just at the bottom of the square. But it doesn't matter. Any data that you create for us is very, very valuable and will go towards dramatically improving or even saving people's lives. So if you do too much mapping, that's absolutely fine. You can always flick back if you want to the original screen to have a look at your square in more detail. But as I say, if you wander out of it a little bit, it doesn't matter. We ask people to try and stick to them just so we can keep track of how much mapping we've done, but it doesn't matter too much, so don't worry. Okay, so as I said, there are two types of things to map here. We've got some tracks and some huts. Okay, and the way we do that is we just draw them onto the map. Okay, and everything we draw onto OpenStreetMap is divided into three different types of object. Okay, we have points, which are things like trees, telegraph poles, lamp posts, post boxes, anything very, very small. We don't use points very much in our project because there aren't a lot of point features. The only thing you might wish to map with a point normally in Uganda would be perhaps a large tree, but we don't insist that people draw those, so that's up to you. Things you do use a lot are lines. So lines are used to draw anything like a track, a road, a stream, a river, a railway. Any long features like that will be drawn with a line. And then anything that has a shape to it, so a building, a car park, even a country, would be drawn as an area. Okay, and all we have to do is decide what we're going to draw and pick the correct tool. And I'm going to start with a track, I think. Okay, so that would be a line. And I click on the line. Now, ideally, if you're going to draw a line, you want it to connect to another line. Now, that isn't always possible, and it's okay if it doesn't. You will get some warnings telling you about that, but it's not a problem. Don't worry about it. The main thing we want to do, if we can connect, is to make sure we've clicked on an existing line, and that'll connect it to it. Okay, so we click there, and we've started drawing our line. We have this little tool. And we can zoom in with our mouse wheel, or we can use our arrows on our keypad to move the map around and make it easier for us to see where we're going. And all we do is click along the path that the line takes. You don't have to be super precise, but the closer you can get to the actual track, the better. And you just go along like that, and you can keep going for effectively as long as you like. It's sometimes hard to see exactly where it goes, but you can see we pick up the obvious track again here, and I can use my arrows to navigate and keep on going and just simply click along. You can get quite fast at this. It doesn't take very long, and this data will go straight into the database. It will be used on our paper maps, on our digital maps, and in the satellite navigation devices that our drivers use to get the clinic out to communities. Okay, now I've hit a point. I'm going to stop here because I'm near some huts, so I'm going to double click and that will end this track. Okay, and I'm going to say what it is. Now, track might already appear in your list if you've used it before, or you can simply type in the search box track, and that will give you some options. And I'm going to say, yeah, this is a track. Okay. And once I've filled all that in, I can be quite happy and just click that little X there, and that's a track in the database. Done. Okay, very, very simple. The next thing I'm going to map is probably this hut. Okay, so you can see these are quite small features. These huts are only 2 or 3 meters in diameter. They're 2 or 3 meters tall, and they're small sort of clay constructions with a thatched roof. And there's a lot of these in Uganda. You can actually see them on our main web page. These are what we're looking at from the top. Okay, these huts. Okay, these are the main thing people live in this region. Now, ordinarily, if we're drawing around, say, a big square building, we get our area tool and we draw, let's pretend there's a building here, around our square like that. Okay, and I'm just going to delete that. Okay, we don't have to match the round shape of these, and I'll show you why. So if you get your area, the best way to map something that's round is to just draw a triangle inside it. So just 1, 2, and then double click for 3. Okay. We're then going to call it a hut. So I'm going to type hut in here and click on hut, and then click on the X button, and we have a hut. Okay. Obviously that isn't very good, is it? We don't want a triangle shape there. We want something round. So what I need to do is click in the middle of the hut. Okay, and the little dots will come back. And then if I right click in the middle of the hut, I can click on this circularize button, and that'll make it into a circle. I'll click off it and I have a perfectly circular hut that fits exactly into the footprint of the building, which is fantastic. And I'll do another one here. I can click on area, I can draw a little triangle, 1, 2, double click for 3. I can just click on hut and say it's a hut. Click on X, and then the other way I could do that is if I click on the middle of it again and just press O on my keyboard, and it'll do that for me as well, which is fantastic. Very, very useful little tool. The other thing I can do, I'm just going to find another hut to draw. There's one down here. Okay, I can click on one I've already drawn. If there's lots the same size, I can use Control C, as in the same as if I'm copying a feature, and then I can go down to where my next hut is, and then use Control V. Okay, and that puts a new hut exactly the same on my mouse, and I can put that wherever I like. And then every time I press, and then I click off it and it's gone, every time I press Control and V from now on, it will just reappear, and I can just keep on doing that, adding new huts as I go. Okay, and if I want to get rid of that, I can just press escape. That's very handy. Because sometimes this is quite sparse here, sometimes there'll be lots of huts, there could be hundreds, and it makes it very, very quick to just copy and paste those huts again and again and again. But only do that, of course, if they're all the same size. You don't want huts that don't fit very well. There's other things here I can put in, so I'm going to put another little length of track here and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Lovely. So let's track again and stop. And then what I'm going to do is fill in these areas. So you can see there are areas around these huts that are need marking out, really. It's because that would help us join up these tracks. So I'm going to get an area. I'm just going to draw, and you can see if I click on the white dots on these tracks, it will make them part of the boundary, and that's very important. So I'm going to just include that hut and bring that round to here, double click to finish again, and then I'm going to call this a residential area. Okay, now there aren't great there's not something that really sounds suitable to call these areas, but it's very helpful to map them. So residential area seems to be the best fit, and one that's quite widely used in this area. So again, I've called it residential area. I just click on the X and it's gone. Okay, and that's about all there is to it. All I need to do now is continue adding in tracks. If some of them look a bit smaller, I could call them footpaths instead of tracks. So I often say if it looks like I could get a vehicle down it, I would call it a track, like this one. This one perhaps is a bit smaller than that, so I can click on it, click here on the arrow, and I could change that to footpath. Okay, So let's call it a footpath, and I'll stop there. And then that, it looks slightly different. Once again, please don't obsess about the classifications you give them. If it's got tarmac on it, I would call it a road. If it looks quite big, like you could get a vehicle down it, I'd call it a track. And if it looks quite small, I would call it a footpath. But please don't worry, it doesn't matter if you get them slightly wrong, okay? There's no way that we can know. The important thing is, if you get the geometry in there, if you've drawn it in, our team on the ground can fix the classifications for you. Okay? So say I've now finished mapping, or I've drawn quite a few features and I want to just save them. All I'd need to do here is click on the Save button. Okay, so these features I've added so far are not yet in the database. Okay, I have to press Save, and I'm going to just put a little comment in here. Okay, so this comment is going to say University of Manchester community mapping. Okay, it doesn't matter what you write in there, you can write anything you like. You could write your name, you could write what you're studying. It's just a comment. Normally you'd say what you've added. So I'm going to add to that huts and tracks. Okay, and then you'll have some warnings potentially. So this warning is telling me that one of my paths isn't attached to anything. And I know that, that's fine, because I'm going to draw a residential area here that will connect it up. So that's okay, and I don't need to worry about that. It will also warn you if you, for example, drawn some huts and forgotten to classify them. If that happens, that's also fine. You can just click on the warning and it will take you back to the hut and you can give it a classification. You then come down to this little form. Please do not tick this box. Okay, as part of community mapping, our association, we will check data that's been created. So you don't need to ask people at OpenStreetMap to do it. Because we're hoping to generate a lot of data, we don't want to be overloading them with work. So please do not tick this button because someone will be checking all of your data anyway. And then you simply press upload, and that will take a couple of seconds to just upload the changes to the OpenStreetMap server, and it's done. Okay, so let's give you a little message saying you've done so, and you can just click on the X to get rid of that, and then we can carry on, and that's great. All right. Now there's one or two little gotchas. One thing to be wary of is, I'm just going to give you another example. So I'm going to draw in that missing area that we talked about. Okay, so I think there's another residential area here that we can draw in, and I'll double click to finish. Now sometimes what happens is someone will click on one of the dots instead of the area. So you can see now the dot is highlighted and not the area. And that will mean you get a different list of things. So if I tried to search for hut, it wouldn't come up. And if I tried to search for residential area, it wouldn't come up. And that's because it thinks I'm trying to classify this dot. So if that happens, just make sure you click either in the shape or on the line, but in the shape's the easiest thing. And then you can say, yeah, okay, that is a residential area. And then click on the X and it's done. Okay, and what I'll do now is I'll just keep on going, filling in the roads, the paths, the huts, and so on and so forth, until I'm satisfied that this area has been mapped. Okay, and when I've done that, all I need to do is go back to the tool. All right, so I need to make sure I've saved everything, which I haven't, so I'll click save, and I'll go through the same process again. I don't need to worry about that now, but that's something I would need to do before I close this tab. And then I go back here and I say I've finished mapping this square. Okay, and that means it's logged in our database, and they'll say this square has been dealt with. We don't need to check it. We don't need to get someone else to work on it. It's been done, and that's great. I'm not going to click that because I didn't finish it. So I'm going to click on I've given up mapping this square. And that simply means that we log that someone has done some mapping on it, but there's more to do. And that's also very valuable information. So I just click on it. I've given up mapping this square, which is perfectly fine. And then it'll give me a new square. Dead easy. Okay, that's all there is to it. So this is actually giving me, I think, the same square again, which is fine. If that happens, you can just press the blue button and it'll give you a new one, and you can just keep going until you find something. Okay, so this one, once again, you can see the road there has been mapped already, but this track running across hasn't. So you could draw that in and then come back to here and to log it as an area that's been mapped. And in doing so, we're slowly filling in the whole area and working across the whole north of Uganda, this Acholi region that I was talking about earlier. And the more mapping we do, the more people we can help, the more lives we can save. On average, remember, every 50 huts you put in will mean someone gets a leg. And adding in those roads and paths means we can get to them in the most efficient way possible, which obviously means we can help more people. So anything you can map is very, very valuable to us. Once you're happy you've finished, you can just make sure you've ticked it. So if you've got these 3 buttons instead of the other 2, you can just close these tabs and you're done. And once again, thank you very much for joining in. I hope you enjoy it. And crucially, please remember you can do this anytime you like. This website is always open. It's incredibly valuable, and you can build up your own profile on OpenStreetMap, generate a lot of data. It really is a worthwhile way to spend your time. So yeah, once again, thank you so much on behalf of myself, the project team, and the people of Northern Uganda. We hope you have fun, and if you have any questions or problems, you can contact me at jonathan.hook@manchester.ac.uk, and those details are also available at the bottom of the main website as well. Okay.